Hello and welcome to this FUT Weekly podcast. On this episode, we're talking about something completely new to FIFA, and that is significant gameplay changes to FIFA 22 in July in title update number 14. We have with us on this podcast the gameplay producer to give his insights. On this episode, we'll be diving deep into those gameplay changes and finding out what the intention is behind them and what kind of impact we can expect. If you're on PC, this update will be out, and if you're on console, it will be soon. If you'd like to see the written notes for this update, then you can check out the link in the description. A big thanks to EA and particularly the gameplay team for making this podcast happen. And I can introduce a guest on so many FUT Weekly podcasts, FUT legend, 𝘬𝘗𝘬𝘬𝘁. Hello.
Hello, Ben. Happy to be back chatting on another pod, and a special one nonetheless. You know, it's a rarity for these to occur this way, so a special treat over the summer.
Yeah, it certainly is, because we can introduce live gameplay producer Shaun. I probably should have checked this before we press record. Pejic.
Everyone gets it wrong. It's all good. The correct pronunciation is Pejic.
Pejic.
Yes.
Okay, was
Pejic.
Overcomplicating it a bit.
Yeah.
But also I should apologise to Wrexham fans 2000 to 2009 who no doubt know how to pronounce it. And I was going to say, that brings us on to the point that not only are you a live gameplay producer, but you've played pretty high level football. Interesting at the moment with Wrexham back in the footballing spotlight.
Yeah, you know what? Some history to the club. I played there for almost 10 years when I was young, fit, and I had hair. I grew up around the area. But yeah, now seeing Wrexham in FIFA is pretty special.
Yeah.
Soft spot in my heart for Wrexham, so it's good to see them in the game.
Well, that's what I was thinking. People have been crediting these Hollywood stars, but perhaps, you might have got to get on yourself.
If I told you, I might have to kill you.
He brokered the deal.
Maybe,
you mentioned more footballing history, but you're involved in Wrexham's Football League trophy win, right?
That's right. Yeah. I won the Happy Trophy.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, having done my research, I did notice you were actually born in England. You played for Wales under 21s. You played in the US. And I was thinking this Group B group with Wales, USA, Iran, England. How are you feeling about that one?
You know what? It's a tough one this year for me because, like you said, I was born in England. Half of my family is Welsh. And my wife is from the US, America. So,
oh, wow.
There's going to be some big family tension during the World Cup.
And is your best mate from Iran? Because that would nicely
I know,
complete
I'm not sure my connections were... I got some friends from Iran, actually. So.
Obvious answer then is USA.
Just, to make the wife happy. Yeah, you're right. Yes, I should say USA top. But my gut feeling is England, then USA, then... Wales, Iran fourth, just based on trying to make my family happy.
Clearly closest to the Welsh side then. But actually, I mean, Wales finished above England, of course, in the Euros. So you never know.
You're right.
Here's the real question. How many goals does England score in the group stage?
Oh, you know what? They can't score right now. So I don't know the answer. My gut feeling is saying they're in a bad form right now. They can't score many goals. So I don't know. I'm going to say they're going to score 3 goals.
Yeah. It's like they win one, 2-1, maybe win one, 1-0, and draw 0-0, and that's the end of it.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm pretty concerned about it. They're hard-working, defensively organised teams that are going to cause us problems, I think, and you're right, we probably won't get many goals. But what we're going to move on to, actually, is about adding more goals into the game. We'll talk about these changes that are coming, but first of all, just very quickly to start us off, is there anything, Shaun, when you came into EA many years ago now, that having been a footballer, you thought this is something that needs resolving, changing, improving?
Yeah. My first couple of things was what I was familiar with was defending. So I really wanted to focus on that as well as the positioning side of things. I saw some things from my own experience where I wanted to dive into and understand. I've been on the game for 10 years, and in that time I've had lots of input in the gameplay. But yeah, from the very first year, those are the two that stood out to me. I wanted to dive into straight away. I
think that one point of clarification that's probably useful for our audience here is, like, how would you describe the difference between being a gameplay producer and a, like, quote unquote live gameplay producer?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's very similar. Like, I am still in charge of gameplay, and I've got experience in gameplay, but the live aspect is more like communicating with our players, like you guys, the community, trying to understand what do people like with the game, what don't they like about it, or what things do we need to improve, so there's that extra layer of trying to make the game fun for everybody, and keep the game fresh and new. So we're always pulling that authentic versus fun kind of lever. Obviously, we want to make a fun game, but we do want to make it like a real football experience for people. And it is a very tight line to get that right. And also the extra lever in there is we want to make this for everybody to play, not just one group. For example, the pro hardcore group is also a bunch of new people playing the game too, beginners who want to try and learn the game and understand it, and everyone in between too. So there's lots of different types of the community we look at, and we want to try and please, and make this game fun for everyone. So yeah, those are definitely some of the things that I think about.
And I guess that brings us nicely actually onto what we're going to talk about, because you've got in here both things to make it fun, which we're going to go to first, and then also some more balancing, maybe feedback focused changes. And I guess people will be aware this isn't something that normally happens at this point in the cycle. Typically, there tends to be quite a long wait between the last gameplay update and the new game. Just wondering what the thought process is behind having an update like this.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's a new thing. We've not done this before this late in the game. I mean, the purpose of this is to refresh gameplay, make it a new experience for people. The idea is to focus more on the attacking side of things, to give you more attacking options. But also there's an extra layer of we talk to the community, we understand that maybe some balance concerns. So some of these changes are to refresh the game, add some more tools on the attacking side, but some of them are also tied into trying to tweak the game based on feedback from the community as well. So yeah, there's 10 changes in total, which is exciting.
Yeah, looking forward to going through them. And I've got the notes in front of me, but I should also say, if you'd like to see these visually as we talk about them, then you can head over to the FUT Weekly Podcast YouTube channel and see clips of many of these in action. The other thing to add is that these are changes for both old and next gen, so no matter what version of the game you're playing, you will see these. And the first one for me, definitely the most exciting looking, is the proper introduction of the knuckleball.
Ooh.
So increase the likelihood of the knuckleball shot occurring when requesting a high-powered shot while the ball is 2.2 feet from the player's feet. The shot angle needs to be forward and towards where the player is facing. Looks like a fun one. Is the knuckleball, it is in the game because you can do it from free kicks, right?
Yeah, you're right. You can do it for free kicks, but it's so hard, almost impossible to do when you're just dribbling and want to take a shot in game. So this change actually allows it to happen in the right context though. So like you said, it's facing towards the goal when there's a little bit of distance between you as the dribbler and the ball, like you said, roughly 2.2 feet away. So the ball has to be a little bit ahead of you. So you need to do maybe a little bit of a heavy touch or a very small knock on just to create that separation between you and the ball. And if you're facing towards the goal, you kind of do relatively high power with just laces, just a B button. Then yeah, you increase the chance of getting a knuckleball, where you kick the ball from a shot and the ball moves in the air and it sways left, right, and it kind of goes around the air a little bit and hopefully goes into the top corner. So yeah, it's a really cool new thing where it should ideally make people try and do these long range screamers from outside the penalty area, like just basically smash the shot and you'll see the ball moving in the air. And also the keeper, if you get one of these knuckleball shots, the keeper might be a little bit slower at reacting, or you might guess one way and go the other way, and it kind of looks like you should intend to get more goals in that way.
Does it impact the accuracy of the shot at all?
It does not impact the accuracy of the shot. No, it's just a different type of trajectory to get to the goal. So the accuracy will still be the same. Like if you do it with a really low rated player, then it will still probably go wide and high and wide, but if you do it with a good player, then it'll still be on target. But that's all the same. There's no changes to that. It's just to change a different type of trajectory.
But it does increase the chance of you scoring it because it might deceive the keeper, perhaps. Do you think?
Ideally, you should score more goals for doing this because the keeper will be slightly less accurate at saving them. But there is a chance that if you do higher power, then it might have a knuckleball effect and it might just hit the post or might just curve away and go over the crossbar, so like it does depend on the physics of the air and the ball physics and how it moves in the air, so there is some sort of like kind of lucky, hopefully it happens, but that's kind of like real life too. When you do a knuckleball shot from outside the area, you don't really have control over it. You just kick it really hard and then rely on the ball physics to kind of like hopefully hit the right place on the net, so that's the idea.
Yeah, it reminds me of Finesse shot trait actually, which a lot of people think increases the accuracy, but it actually just changes the trajectory of the shot, so it's more likely to beat the keeper because it has more curve. I think we should probably move on to the next one, which is low driven shots. Interested to see how this one plays out as well. It says here, greatly increased the accuracy of lower mid-powered low shots. So it says greatly, so I guess it's going to be quite big. And this says significant reduction on shot spread for low to mid-power low shots. Now, I guess there's going to be some concerns because it used to be a real meta, a real go-to, the low-driven, but I haven't really seen, apart from at the start of the cycle, anyone really using it. So I guess potentially, Shaun, just encourage more use of different shot types.
Yeah, I think you kind of mentioned it. Like you said, I don't think many people use it just because of the success rate of asking for a low shot and actually scoring them or hitting the target was quite low. Most commonly, when you try to use it, it would sometimes feel like it would kind of trickle along the ground and go wide of the net. So like it didn't feel quite beneficial enough to try it. So if we start to see more low shot goals going in, or even makes you think, oh, maybe I should try a low shot in this type of situation, then that's the idea, that's the intention behind it.
Nice. And we can move on to the next one, which is finesse shots. Just a quick one, no clip for this, but slightly increase the effectiveness of finesse shots in potential goal scoring situations in which the ball carrier isn't under heavy pressure from a defender or goalkeeper. And actually, Japes, you had a few concerns about this one.
Yeah, I mean, there's a cohort of the player base that have said at one point or another that finesse shots might be too effective from range. Any concern on your side?
I think I know the context what you're talking about. It's like outside the penalty area, kind of a little bit of an angle.
There's the spot.
That one spot, right? Far post, you just whip it in there, far post.
Which, like, if you'd see your favorite player scored on a Saturday, you'd be over the moon and talk about it.
Well, the thing is, I remember seeing someone score a goal like that in real life, in person, and thinking, what a goal. Not crazy, but very impressive.
Yeah, it feels like a super realistic goal.
Exactly. And then later in the day, I was seeing someone score it on FIFA and thought, no, not having that at all.
I know, right? It's fun scoring them, but conceding them, it's not so fun, is it? But I think you're right, though. The frequency of scoring those in FIFA, I think, is a little bit too high. I think, like you said, it's a rare thing that happens in real world, and if it happens rarely, it feels amazing. But I think just in FIFA right now, it's happening just a bit too often. So the intention for this update is not to add to that type of context. Like we on purpose stayed away from that one we're describing outside the box. You're kind of shaping it up far post. So the intention of this patch shouldn't touch that. It should be the same, but the change we're making in this update is more on the easier context. So more when you're one-on-one with a goalkeeper, you're facing towards the goal and there's no one around you and you just want to like side foot the ball, finesse shot in the side of the net, for example. So like the intention is to increase the effectiveness of those ones a little bit more. So if it's more difficult, like you're outside the box or you're under pressure or you're doing like a 90-degree shot, then that shouldn't be effective. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's the intention, not to try and increase those world beater backstick goals that happen all the time.
Yeah, increasing the effectiveness in good to great goal scoring opportunities to me is like a really, really exciting change. I think I find myself far too often thinking that I need to do a ball roll and try to like take it around the keeper, or like change the direction versus just taking, versus slotting it into the corner, everything that you're taught from the time that you're a kid. So this is a change that I'm very much excited for.
Yeah, there was some debate, I think, as well, whether the long range finesses are good or bad, because they do mean that theoretically your opponent has to come out to you, which could be considered a good thing. Let's move on to something else, which I know, Japes, you'll be excited about, and that is headers. First of all, we've got changes to chipped headers. Increase the speed at which the ball travels at following a chipped header, and generally lowered the ball trajectory that can result from a chipped header. Do you do chipped headers, Japes? Might you start trying chipped headers? I know you get a lot of heading opportunities.
Ben, I gotta be honest, I can't say I was particularly aware of chipped headers to begin with. But now that I know that that's a thing, I'm obviously going to try to do that. That said, the only time I suppose I found myself doing something like this is if it's an over-the-top through ball that's maybe bounced once and the keeper's rushing out and trying to pop it, over the keeper. But it's not something I guess theoretically you play a cross to the back post. You could try to do a little looping header over the keeper. I don't know. I'm gonna have to play around with that and try it.
Yeah, I'm hoping it will just be a bit less punishing when I do it by accident, trying to change player. But I think we'll move on to normal headers actually, because this is pretty interesting. So increase the speed at which the ball travels at following a low or mid-powered header. And also lower powered headers are more likely to produce a lower ball trajectory. So this is maybe a more significant change, Shaun. Do you want to explain a bit about what this actually means in practice? People can see the video, of course, but just for the audio reference.
So on the range of the power bar, if you do a header and you either tap it or do like roughly up to about 50% power or less, that trajectory before this change was probably quite low and weak, and you probably never really score them because they were just quite slow, So this change is intended to try and get that low trajectory in the bottom corner. So like you said, those mid to low power request headers will be slightly faster, encouraging people to try that and have a different variety of header goals, as well as like the chip header, like you were saying earlier, that back stick, you kind of like want to loop it back across over the goalkeeper, like back post kind of header as well. So hopefully just this one combined will just give you more tools, more variety and different types of headers, which again should result in more goals ideally.
Yeah, and it's good in terms of the low powered header because it's going to allow you to pick the height rather than just being very downward and then not actually necessarily being the best height to beat the keeper. So it's nice to have more control, but also not have power as basically a wasted input.
Yeah, I know I've accidentally tapped the button while trying to do a header, and it's ended up with like a little U11 header. I would say headers are something they're already manually directed. And so adding this to where you can decide if you want it to be, lower, middle, higher, just by, how much power you put on it is a fantastic change in my mind.
Yeah,
well, I'll certainly defer to 𝘁𝗃𝗃𝘀 on this one. But something I do know about is skill moves. And there's going to be a new skill move added, the ball roll cut. This can only be performed by players with a 4 or 5 star skill move rating, but at least in foot, that's most players at the moment. And the way you do it is by holding L1 or LB on Xbox and flick the right stick back and then back. It's a nice additional option, gives you a sharp turn. I'm sure people will be seeing that in the video at the moment. But it certainly reminds me of what people call the de Jong turn, which is also flicking the right stick back twice. Was that the intention there? Maybe an effective skill move for turning, but also, I guess, looks nice too.
Yeah, you're right. It is like a kind of like turns you back where you came from kind of motion. It's not super flary, but it's quite effective. But it shouldn't be too effective. Obviously, that line of making it useful but not overpowered is the key. So, it's a whole new motion, new skill move, just to give you more attacking options. Like another way to maybe go back where you came from, or maybe create some space. So it's a really cool looking animation. It's quite a unique move. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to see people start to try this in the game.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as someone who typically tries all the new skill moves at the start of a new cycle, exciting to get one added during the cycle instead. And let's move on to some other things. These don't have video accompaniments to them. They're more things that are, I would say, responding to player feedback, perhaps. And this first one, I think, will go down well. Significantly reduce the reach of attempted shot blocks by AI-controlled players and slightly reduce the reach of attempted shot blocks by human-controlled players. I mean, Japes, this sounds good, right? We like less blocks, more goals.
Yeah, we of course like less blocks and more goals. Although I was a defender once in my life, I like to think that I could block more things than not. But I'm curious to see how the distance between what is blocked or what isn't blocked works, and whether you can do manual blocks as well now, and how that might be impacted.
Yeah, I think the two keywords that you called out is the significantly reduced from the AI, but it's slightly reduced for the human controlled defenders. So those two words are quite key in this one, where the AI, you'd see more of a difference versus a human defender. Blocking the shot will be very subtle. So the intention is to reward you if you, like you said, if you're doing well, if you defend correctly and you're controlling the right guy, then that won't be as punishing as if you're relying on the AI, for example, which you could argue is probably less intended behavior from the player, so
yeah, that makes sense. And actually the next point is quite similar in terms of what it's trying to achieve. Auto tackle we're talking about here, and it says significantly decrease the range required for a defender to attempt a tackle without being requested to do so. I guess once again, meaning there's less AI assistance. Is that basically reducing the auto tackle range that's around a player that you're controlling?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. Yeah, you're right. It's like when you're defending, when you're controlling the defender, just moving around, either jockeying or just left stick moving around to try and defend the attacker wherever the situation is. There was or there is a range around the defender where essentially if the attacker gets inside this range, you will, without pressing the tackle button, the system will say, okay, now we're going to tackle and do an auto kind of tackle is what we call it. So the intention is to try and reward people pressing the tackle button at the right time and not just jockeying and trying to keep up with the play and relying on the system to do it for you. We wanted to add that little bit more skill there to making you want to press that button,
Ben, we've obviously given advice to the listeners, like to use the tackle button, and like manual defending is something that, I think we all want to feel is rewarding. And, I'm pretty hopeful that this change is going to make defending feel even more manual. And ultimately, I think that increases the skill gap when you're introducing changes like this. So this is one of the ones that I'm extremely excited for.
Yeah, it's the fact it says significantly decreased for me, which makes me interested. Sometimes you see slight changes, but this is significant, hopefully, and keen to see how this impacts the game. And similar with contain distance in terms of its impact, because this says increase the contain distance for containing a player when pressing X or second man press, or A, I guess, if you're on Xbox. That does sound like a similar thing in terms of making defense less AI assisted.
Yeah, it is tied together a little bit. There were maybe times where you'd get quite close to the dribbler, and then maybe you'd also get an auto tackle without you actually pressing the tackle button. So the intention is to still contain the dribbler, so you're still in a good position. There's still a good distance between you both, but you shouldn't get that auto tackle kicking in when you either press the secondary contain or the regular contain button, or even if you're just jockeying and running around. So just overall, in general, we're trying to enforce people to press that tackle button and switch to the right defender to then press the tackle button at the right time. So
yeah, that makes sense. In terms of what we've talked about so far, I think a lot of people may be looking at this stuff and thinking this is all great. And part of my frustration this cycle, or for a few months, has been the fact that, I don't know, blocks have been painful. People auto-tackling, relying on their defensive AI is a common complaint. Is there a reason why this stuff is coming into the game now? I feel like a lot of people probably would have wanted to see certain changes happen earlier, certain tweaks to the AI. Is there a reason why it is now that this is happening?
I mean, it's complicated to make a video game, as you guys can probably imagine. But obviously, we continue to listen to all the feedback. We play the game ourselves. We understand where the game's at. But coming up with this list of 10 changes, it takes time, And I think the intention was to kind of bucket it all together, do one kind of bigger update all together to kind of freshen it up and and inject some more goals into the game. So I think. Hopefully that answers your question and gives you enough to go on.
Yeah, I guess some people are probably still going to be wondering, why wasn't it a stepped approach? Because that seems better for balance, right? But I can see the attraction of having a larger update, which people can really sink their teeth into, rather than it being fragmented and not really providing that refreshing feeling that people may want. But I guess there are trade-offs there, and obviously the dev team have to consider something else, I'm sure, that is being worked on that isn't yet announced, so we won't be talking about here. But what we will talk about is the final point here, which is dribbling. It says here, slightly increased animation speeds when dribbling, agile dribbling, and strafe dribbling. Also slightly increased the animation speed of reverse stepovers, and body feint moves. Now, Japes, I think you might have a few concerns here, because you feel that there is a little bit too much focus on dribbling.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that people like to score now is to try to maybe skill cancel past players and use quick, agile attackers to dribble. And, when we're talking about increasing animation speeds when dribbling, that is makes me a little bit nervous, just because you already have this host of players that feel lightning quick, and the defenders there's like a limited crop of defenders in the game that are able to keep up with that level of agility. So, improving that, I think maybe it will open the game up more, which maybe can be good and easier to break down defensive blocks that sit really, really deep. But I think this is a change that, to me, probably benefits the middle, or the highest part of the bell curve, but for the top end players could introduce a level of frustration. That said, improving the speed of some animations like step overs feels like a necessary change.
There's a very slight increase in playback animation speed, so it's not going to be a drastic change, that one, but like you said earlier, the intention is tying back to the original goal of having more attacking options, more goals, more tools on the attacking side, but this is just very small percentage of everything combined. This dribbling change.
Mm-hmm. Real quick,
yeah,
just to add in, when you say the playback animation speed, can you elaborate a little bit further? As the listeners kind of take these changes into account, is there anything that they should be trying to feel the change?
Yeah, it's like you said, it's based on attributes. Dribbling attribute, agility attributes, and reactions. And also there's like a slight player height. So if you've got a tall player versus a small player. So those are the type of attributes we do when we just consider how quick or slow that animation plays back in dribbling. So for example, if you've got like a goalkeeper dribbling around, you'll see the difference of how slow the animations or how slow the player turns and takes a touch with the ball versus like a Messi, for example, who's like high end on the dribbling side. So yeah, hopefully did that explain it enough to you?
Yeah, definitely. I think Ben and I talk a lot about which attributes seem to be important, like time and time again, or like secret, I don't know if it's secret attributes, but attributes that seem to impact things more than you might think. And I think the extent of the change will be interesting to tell. Like, with this change, can you use a player that's got, in the 80s agility wise, and they're going to feel better, feel quicker turning? So it could introduce a larger variety of players.
Also fascinating to know that reactions is a factor in the playback speed of animations, because that explains, I've always felt like players with high reactions feel better on the ball, but typically associate reactions with more loose balls or reading situations than having the ball at your feet. But it is in the dribbling category, of course. Now, we've gone through all 10 of these new features. Just quickly, before we wrap up, because we've talked about dribbling and we've talked about balancing, do you want to bring up your big gripe, which is, of course, being able to cancel skill moves?
My issue with canceling, Ben, is not that you can cancel. It's that the animations that the game gives you when a player does cancel a skill move feels super unrealistic to me. Like the animation speed when something's canceled as well. Like if I'm going to do a skill move and I've shifted my body weight to start doing the skill move, I can't magically teleport my weight back to the other side, and just because I decided in my head I'm going to cancel it, right? I'm going to like trip over myself a little bit or fumble the ball. So generally my issue with skill canceling is around the way the animations play out.
It's a tough one. Like the intention of it is obviously add a little bit more user skill. It's super hardcore to do this cancelable skill move, and it's always tricky to not make it too overpowered or too useful. So it's something we'd definitely keep monitoring, keep an eye on. We definitely don't want to put overpowered mechanics into the game. We want to make it fun for everybody, but also keep that skill level there. So it's a tough line. We always keep monitoring these things and keep an eye on them for future references for sure.
Yeah, I guess that's why you saw the 𝗧𝗮𝗮𝗃 being uncancelable, and there's always that balance to be struck with cancelling skill moves. Certain ones do look weird, I agree with Jay. Some of them I think work and add a certain level of skill. One thing I wanted to bring up was the defensive depth, something that has been very frustrating throughout the cycle on next gen, creating a lot of space in front of it and not staying in a line. There are going to be these things that people are frustrated about, not happy that they haven't been changed. What would you say to those people about their concerns?
I mean, we will still be keeping an eye on the game, keeping an eye on the feedback, and trying to address high priority things that are maybe breaking the game, let's say, or making it unfun for people. So if there's something really big that it's a very common trend across the community where we're like, you know what, this is something we need to look at, then that's definitely on the table. But there is a priority to start looking at future games as well, which we can't talk about too much today. But keep sharing that feedback, keep sharing videos. We all keep an eye on that and keep looking at the game. So if anything is still frustrating you guys, just keep communicating it. We'll definitely keep an eye on it.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think the final thing to say is that actually, 𝗬𝗍𝗄, I'm speaking on behalf of you here probably, and most of the community, it's great to see such a significant gameplay patch or any gameplay patch at all at this stage in the cycle, and looking forward to trying it out.
You know, Ben, I wholeheartedly disagree. I'm just kidding. No, it's really fun. I think over the summer, oftentimes we're like, well, we've been playing this very much like kind of exact same game for a while, and we start looking towards, you know, things in the future. This, you know, should spice things up, and the theme is my favorite 4-letter word, which is goal, and that is, you know, great to see. And I'm hopeful and optimistic with the changes. I think if there's a time to do it and see what happens, now is absolutely the time to do it. So, you know, kind of like bravo on that.
Yeah, and we should say actually really keen to hear listener thoughts when this drops on consoles, which should be the week of the 11th of July, early in that week. If you're on PC, then the patch will be out when you're listening to this. Do send your thoughts in to @FootWeeklyPod on Twitter or footweekly@mail.com. And if you'd like to hear our thoughts on this patch once we've got our hands on it, then you can subscribe to the Foot Weekly podcast via all the podcast platforms and on YouTube. We'll be talking about it probably in about a week's time or 2 weeks' time from now. So we should say thank you very much to Shaun for coming on this podcast. It's been great to have your insight.
You're welcome anytime. Happy to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. And if we don't catch you before, good luck with that Group B World Cup dynamic.
I know there's going to be some tension in my family over the next couple of months.
Thank you very much as well to 𝗬𝗍𝗄. Great to have you on the podcast. It is @𝗬𝗍𝗄 on Twitter.
Yes, Twitter @𝗬𝗍𝗄.
Great. Well, thank you very much as well to you, listener, for joining us on this podcast. Do subscribe if you'd like these podcasts directly into your podcast app or on YouTube. And if you'd like to support Get Extra Podcast every week via Patreon, just search Support Foot Weekly. To all those supporters keeping the podcast going, thank you very much. And a big thank you to those icon patrons: Dave B, Coach Vass, Chris W, DJ FIFA Player, Hugh J, Steve C, Matt L, Alistair, Alan G, Anthony R, Dominic, Rob P, L, Jeff B, Christopher R, Stephen F, Michael, Tom B, Damon H, Nick Jack M, Eric T, Roger D, Alex M, Dan W, Siler P, Matt H, Harry P, Neil P, Adam G, @𝗵𝗚𝗄𝘀, Brian S, Andrew C, Sam K, Jake G, Michael P, Zach O, Springford, Patrick, Dominic G, Adam HC, Adam R, Andy H, Joe W, Dylan, Orion B, Mindor L, and Tim J. Plus a special thanks to Luke M, Dave B, Hugh J, Tom M, Darren W, and Pato Foot for advice and production assistance. Before I leave you, just one more thing to add though. FIFA's a bit like life really. It has its many ups and its many downs. If you're having a few more downs than ups in real life in these more difficult times, then please don't feel that you're alone or need to struggle on without taking action. If you go to thecalmzone.net, there's loads of resources, advice, support, or even just a friendly chat for anyone who needs it. If it sounds like it could help you, then head over to thecalmzone.net. And for now, have a good one, and I'll catch you on the next podcast.